Justin Adams, and I'm a partner at Burchell Wckwire Bryson.
Nice. Great stuff. Okay. So you're a partner, not a regular lawyer.
Well, I mean, just to the extent we distinguish ourselves, that just connotes that I guess I'm part of the ownership or leadership of the firm, whereas there's a variety of different roles. You could be counsel, you could be associate, you could be an article clerk, so that's the easiest thing for me to sort of say is I'm a partner there.
So we'll get right into it. So I gotta ask, everyone's gonna watch is like we had the law students before, now we got an actual lawyer and a partner. So tell us, like, how much is being a lawyer in real life? Is it like Suits?
It is not like Suits. Suits is a hilarious comparison. Actually, we have to think about this a lot. And one of the cool things about being a lawyer is that there's so many TV shows about being a lawyer. And more often than not, it doesn't reflect at all sort of what we do. Like I think in Suits, the hilarious thing is, a car accident happens at 9 o'clock in the morning and you're in court at 2 p.m. the next day, when the reality is, in the real world, that file probably takes 5-6 years. So it, in terms of what lawyers do, sure there's some overlap, but there's some real big differences in terms of what it looks like on the ground and what the job requires. But I wish it was that glamorous.
So what's the day-to-day like then if it's not that glamorous? What's the day-to-day?
I think it depends. For myself, I guess, I'm not particularly organized, but I think for me, I describe my role and I tell clients actually it's kind of like firefighting, or it's like coming to the emergency room. I need to figure out what files do I need to work on to move them ahead to meet deadlines. I have new clients coming in wanting to retain my services or ask questions. Old clients coming back, can you get this for me? Can you get that for me? Courts reaching out to arrange appearances, trying to get ready for court, which is its own process. So it's day-to-day is difficult to predict. Try to be as organized as you can be, but you really can't control it. And then you go and repeat the next day.
So I was on the website, I was looking, and it says that you do like wills and estates. So explain for someone who just hears about wills and estates. It sounds like someone should be in Florida doing those kinds of things.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess I would see it as sort of it's a broader area. It can be as simple as someone rolls in and says, I would like a will. But it can be, and usually with that we do things called power of attorneys, which are you're alive, but a document that gives someone that you're appointing the power to manage your affairs for you, or personal directive, which is like the power of attorney, but healthcare related. Or the other big component of that area is when somebody dies, you have to help their executors, or whether they have a will or don't have a will, to sort of help marshal the person's assets and help them apply for benefits and things like that, and sort of administer their estate. So generally speaking, we're just giving legal advice. The executor or personal representative still does all the work and the heavy lifting. We're just sort of value added, but that, I guess, would be the core area, and then you can have litigation that flows through all those things. Beneficiaries that are disappointed, I didn't get left enough in the will, or I wasn't factored in and I think I should have been. Or you could have a power of attorney scenario. Someone is acting as the attorney for a parent, and one of their siblings are worried that the parent's money is not being spent in an appropriate way or accounted for. So wills and estates is when you start at it, it's as simple as a will, but it can become fairly broad.
For someone who's just out there, because I've noticed a lot of people pass away without getting those things.
Right.
Don't recommend that?
Highly don't recommend it. I mean, I don't know what the stats are now, but I think when I was a younger lawyer, I think the stats of Nova Scotia as a population having a will was under 50%. And I would say even particularly within certain communities, it's even less. It's incredibly problematic. for a whole host of reasons. But, I guess some of the common pitfalls are, if you're not legally married, there's a big misconception that if you're living common law, it's the same as married. No, no, it's not, and it's particularly problematic in wills and estates. You don't have the same rights as a common law partner as you would if you're married. Another common issue in wills and estates are blended families. So a stepchild, unless they're formally adopted, don't necessarily have the same rights as a biological child. If you're adopted, you might not, you're kind of in this gray zone. Are my adopted parents my parents for wills and estates, or is it my biological parents? It's incredibly problematic not to have a will. I guess another thing I'd identify to people would be if you die without a will, and the people that want to look at your estate, if they're not Nova Scotia residents, or even if they are, you might have to post a bond, which is similar to, like, if you're incarcerated or accused of a criminal offense, to get out of jail, you might have to post a bond to get out of jail. Well, in this case, you can have bonding for wills and estates that relate to just being the executor or being the administrator for the estate, which I think a lot of people are surprised about, because they might say, Mom and Dad doesn't have a whole lot. Why do I need it? Well, unfortunately, that's what the law says, and Nova Scotia legislation hasn't really changed for a while, so it can be incredibly complicating not to have a will. And even more complicating if you don't have a power of attorney. That's one that I tell people is actually even probably more important than having a will. If something happens to you, whether you have dementia, Alzheimer's, you could get hit, crossing the street, hit by a car, you're in a coma. Just because you have parents or family, they don't necessarily have a right to manage your affairs for you. As of right, they would have to, in most cases, people have to go through a fairly complicated court process under the adult capacity, and I'm blanking on the full piece of legislation, but basically you have to apply to court to look after somebody's financial affairs when you could do a power of attorney that probably costs $50 or whatever the lawyer is going to charge for it. So it's incredibly, comparatively, a lot less inexpensive and will solve a lot of issues.
Preemptive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just pay the $300 or whatever it is, $50, $300 to save a whole bunch in the future.
And you might not even have to pay. I mean, sometimes people can prepare them themselves. I mean, we don't recommend that as a profession because there's certain rules around how they have to be signed and things like that. But I mean, honestly, like there's a thing called holographic wills, which is a will written in somebody's handwriting. You would be better off grabbing a white piece of paper, even a napkin, and writing out something that looks like a will than having nothing. Because at least that might have the possibility of sort of avoiding some of the issues we're talking about. So, it's one of those things that you might think to yourself, I mean, oftentimes, and for the longest period of time, I didn't have a will myself, which was ridiculous. I don't have any barriers to access to it, but I thought to myself, what does it matter? I don't really have much, if I died, what do I have to give, or I don't have a lot of assets for anybody to worry about, but just even the simple things can be addressed to that.
So, and that's the thing, we're talking about, like the wills and the thing. So I went on the website, I saw you there. So, like, as a partner, you were able to hire, like, family. I saw your brother on there. Mm-hmm. So he's on there.
He's not actually my brother. We're just same last name. But I have a beef to pick with him. He got my email address, so everybody's trying to send me emails. They're saying, I sent you an email. I don't get it because Jonathan, who excellent associate lawyer at my firm, he has my email address. So yeah.
He gets your business too, doesn't he?
That's right. Yeah. The number of times he's probably irritated with me because the number of times he has to forward emails to me in the run of a day are unfortunate. So, but yeah. Sorry, I interrupted your question.
You know what? Forget my question now because I thought I was the whole thing about family and brother. That's my brother. Okay. It just. Yeah. But basically, just make sure you have things set up and prepared just for the future. That's.
Absolutely. Have it looked at. it's one of those things that you can make things a lot simpler for your family, and particularly if you have kids, right? Like, who would you want to look after your kids if you're not here? That might be the only document. So, it's just really important. I've seen unfortunate things, and I guess the other thing too is, like the law school, and there's lots of resources and programs that maybe aren't as well publicized as they could be, but there are avenues to get wills prepared by lawyers, and that would, even if you don't think you have the money, pay for it, So I would seriously encourage people to do what they can to put things in place. And don't ever think that just because you might not have a lot, or you don't think it necessarily be helpful, trust me, your family will be thanking you when you do have those things in place and taken care of.
See, you are pretty popular in doing wills and estates. You're with the Burchells. I know they do a lot with the land grants, so I'm sure you have people calling you, things like that. I'm sure your day-to-day is busy. What gives you that winning spirit? What's that thing that just gets you up and you're like, let's just conquer this, let's take it over?
Oh, wow. What a question. If I'm being honest, it's a real challenging profession. Not every day is filled with that feeling. The highlights for me are, like you said, when clients sort of reach out and say, look, you made a difference in my life, and are appreciative of what you've done, and sort of understand the limits of what you can do. And because sometimes, that's one unfortunate part is you have what the law says. Even my mom says this, there is no justice. And it's a loaded statement to hear her say it, but that's the reality, is some things that happen in this world aren't fair. The law doesn't necessarily fix all the wrong, and things like that. So there's some challenging time, but that really gets me up. And then the other part that I really enjoy is intellectually stimulating issues, or trying to come up with problem solve is pretty fun too.
In terms of like business and doing that, do you have to go out and get business on your own? Like what attracts a client to a lawyer?
Again, I'm probably not the best person for that, in the sense of I've never really had to actually go out and get clients. I've always sort of occupied spaces within firms that I've either worked with the clients, or I have friends that recommend people to me, or other lawyers recommend clients to me. So, but I'd say, in terms of getting clients, good things for young lawyers would be, create connections. Even participating in sort of community educational type things, new business sort of ventures. There's lots of things you can do if you sort of put yourself outside of your comfort zone, which can be a major thing, and not something I can profess that I ever did, or had to do. But just putting yourself out there is probably the main thing. And I guess in terms of growing your business, I would say identify where there's a need. Sometimes the need is within your firm. Identify sometimes the needs within a community, or types of business or things like that, or innovations and things like that. Look where the gap is and sort of go there.